So we got working routing, we got information about the props we receive from React Router. Wouldn't it also be nice to see which route is active here by styling it appropriately? We kind of want to add a special CSS class to the link which is active so that we can use that class to change the styling. Right now, if we inspect that here, you see it is an anchor tag which was created behind the scenes, but again, an anchor tag managed by the React Router, preventing the default, which would be to really send that request. But you also see that there is no class being added to it, even though that technically right now is the active page. So what we have to do is we manually have to tell React Router to do so. And we do this by not using a link, but a different type of link, the nav link component. It's pretty similar to link, but it has some extra props which allow us to define some styling for the active link. Let's replace link with nav link and make sure to import it as I just did. Now if you go back to the application, you see the inspected element, which is the link here at the top. For the active route, which is new post in my case, has changed. There is a active class added now. This CSS class wasn't present before. This of course now allows us to apply some styling. So in block CSS, I can simply add a new rule and not only change the link color to orange if we're hovering over it or clicking on it, but also for all links which have the active class. If we save this, now actually both are orange. If I click on home though, only home is orange. Why is that? The reason for this is something we learned about earlier. By default, React Router treats these paths here as prefixes. And the same is true for links. When checking whether a link is active or not, it treats this as a prefix. So we have to add exact here, just as on the route, to tell React Router, no, the full path should be this, for this to be the active link. So this doesn't change the link we're pointing to, it will always be the path we define, but for the active class, it would take this as a prefix, we overwrite it with exact, now the full path has to be slash for this to receive this active CSS class. So with exact added to the first link, it's not needed for the second because there we don't really have any nested links which should not trigger the active class here. So with exact added for the first link, now we have the home link still being highlighted if we are on the root page. But if I click on new post, only new post is highlighted now. So this is how we can set up active classes. Now, sometimes you don't want to use that default of active as an active class name. Maybe you want to use my-active or highlight or whatever you want. That's why you can override the class which should be appended. You can add additional props, and I'm just splitting this over multiple lines to make it easy to read. You can add active class name and set this to a string. And this could now be myActive. And now for the first link, myActive will be added as an active CSS class and not the default of active. So now you see if we reload, new post still is styled because it still has the active class, because there I didn't change anything. But home now doesn't receive the active styling because, as you can see, if we inspect it on the right, it has a CSS class of myActive because that is what we set up here, active class name, myActive. Now I'll switch this to active, which is redundant because that's the default anyways, but just to leave it here for reference that you can set this up. You also don't have to work with CSS classes if you don't want to. You can also set an active style instead. So let's turn this back to myActive, which wouldn't apply any styling, and let's instead set active style here. This is a dynamic value, it's a JavaScript object, and it actually works just like you use inline styling. Here you can set up any CSS styles, like maybe color, and set this to FA923F, which is the color we use in CSS2. But let's also set text decoration to underline. Now if we save this and go back to the app, you see home is orange and underlined, whereas new post is just orange. Because new post uses this active CSS class. Home, however, when being active, receives the myActive class, which does nothing, but then also receives some inline styling, the inline styling we set up with active style. So this is how you can style the active links. The key takeaway is you have to use the nav link object, not the regular link object, and you might need to use exact to make sure you only style the links for the routes you want to style, and you don't use the to part here as a prefix when it comes to determining whether a route is active or not.